Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. I call this meeting to order at 3:04 p.m. on December 1st, 2022. Roll will be taken by means of sign-in sheet, so please make sure you've signed in. We also have several alternates for today, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. Ryan Haltian for Janine Grodeski, Mandy Lopez for Fabio Del Piero, Jeffrey Perry for Lori Beatty, Paul Richeye for Michael Russo, Charles Delzell for James Madden, Maribel Dietz for Helen Regis, and Sue J. Joe for Robert Holton. Are there any other alternates that I've missed? Okay. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum? Yeah, we have a quorum. We're working on the microphone for the group. So, there are, so the introduction of guests, Provost Haggerty had unexpected family emergency today, and he's sending his deep regrets for not being able to address the Faculty Senate. However, we will still proceed with José Aviles' presentation later in the meeting. There are no public comments for agenda items today. The Secretary's draft of the minutes from November 16th meeting was distributed via email. Are there any corrections to the minutes as distributed? If there are no further corrections, is there a motion to approve as distributed? Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, one abstention. The minutes from November 16th Faculty Senate meeting are approved. Dear Senators, I hope you had a terrific Thanksgiving weekend. And as this meeting, it's only been 2 weeks since our previous meeting, there are only a few items for me to update you. The first item is town hall meeting on zero-based budget has been scheduled for December 13th at 1 p.m. This was due in part to a nearly unanimous vote to request that Academic Affairs hold an open forum on zero-based budgeting at our last meeting. Provost Haggerty will be holding it at the noted date at the Holiday Forum, School of Journalism. An email went out yesterday from Academic Affairs with registration information and an opportunity for you to also write in any questions that you would like to be addressed. Please be sure to register and to attend this meeting. I also want to remind you to just please personally reach out to your colleagues in your respective units and encourage your colleagues to also register and attend this important meeting. On November 19th, I traveled to Alexandria to the Association of Louisiana Faculty Senate's meeting. I was accompanied by Vice President Danielle Terone, a member at large Parampreet Singh, and other LSU A&M faculty members. We were joined at the meeting by faculty from LSU Alexandria, LSU Eunice, and the University of Louisiana system. The discussion was productive, with a portion of it dedicated to tenure protections within the state, especially with regard to the Senate Concurrent Resolution 6. I will keep you apprised of any further developments on this. We continue to work with students and the administration to address pertinent student concerns, including faculty grading reporting, anonymous student reporting on the LSU Cares website, the Comprehensive Academic Tracking System, also known as CATS, and a request to establish a provost list for LSU online students. Earlier this week, the Faculty Senate Executive Committee met with President Tate and Provost Haggerty. The topics of discussion included the cost of the new library, graduate student tuition remission rates for grants, SCR 6, and the prospect of faculty merit raises in 2023. The proposed zero-based budgeting approach was also discussed along with alternatives such as responsibility-centered management, also known as RCM. The merits of each approach were discussed, as were the motivations for the change from historical budgeting. It was stated that potential benefit of switching to a new approach would be an opportunity to address known issues with salary disparities related to gender compression and inversion, as well as informed that any systemic response is impossible until a new source of funding is identified. Given the significant impact these issues have on faculty morale and retention, we will continue to monitor the process closely and advocate for faculty at every opportunity. We will do everything we can to make sure that they're informed about events as they develop, and your voices are included in the process. The last item has to do with the faculty colloquium that's scheduled on January 13th, 2023 at the Law Cook Center. This year's event is featuring speaker Jose Bowen, who will discuss his new book, Teaching Change: How to Develop Independent Thinkers Using Relationships, Resilience, and Reflection. The event is hosted by the LSU Faculty Office of Academic Affairs and sponsored by Campus Federal. The colloquium includes a keynote address, workshop, and lunch for all attendees. Registration information was hyperlinked in my written report that was distributed to you earlier today. The semester has been very busy, to say the least, and it is hard to believe that we are already at the end of the fall semester. Thank you for your continued support and advocacy for faculty. We wouldn't be able to do our job without your active input and feedback. It is an honor to serve you. I hope that you all have a much-deserved, relaxing holiday, and I wish you and your families a very happy and healthy New Year. Please do stay afterwards. We've planned a reception to celebrate the holidays, so I hope you can stay on and just chat a bit and have something to eat. Thank you. This concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Will there be a Zoom option for the town hall for people that may be traveling other places and still? Okay.
Town hall will be completely live streamed, but I encourage you to come in person. But if you can't be there, obviously a link will be sent. Yeah, I will communicate that once it's known. Thank you for that.
I just wanted a quick clarification. Did you say that? Okay, did you say that Academic Affairs had sent out an email about the town hall meeting?
Yes, it was part of, I don't know if Sarah can help out. It was part of a communication from Academic Affairs. So
okay,
it was in the newsletter that was sent out yesterday.
Okay, I'll do, because I
early
wasn't finding it
afternoon
in my email, and so sometimes
Yes.
as Act Center we don't get those, so I wanted to check. I'll go back and check for that though.
If you please check, if you don't find it, please email me. I will be happy to send it to you, and anyone else who hasn't received it, I can send you the link, or I can actually, perhaps it's even better, I can have Sarah send the link directly to everyone following the meeting. So thank you so much for letting me know. Yeah, there's the question.
Okay, it is on. Okay, sorry. I just had a question about, it said in your meeting with President Tate, we were informed that any systematic response is impossible until a new source of funding is identified. And by that, did they mean like a new source, like because of the zero-based funding, they can rearrange funds? That's what they meant. Okay.
That's how we understood it. So that's what all I know. Yeah. Yes, there is a question in the back.
Hi, where are we at with the tuition remission on grants thing? You mentioned in the report that you talked to the upper administration about that. Do they have a
Yes.
direction that they're going with that?
There is a direction, and Dan, you want to explain what was it was found out at that meeting that President Tate seemed to be unaware that people were paying different rates. So it's 20% of the grant. So it's not a flat rate for people who are paying out of their grant money. So I think there's going to be conversation with executive committee membership to address this better and to come up with a plan where researchers here would be paying a flat rate.
Yeah. Right
and-
now, it's a percentage of the student's salary. So like it's disincentivized to
Right.
raise their salary. So that's a huge problem.
Yeah, we, Provost Haggerty and I had a quick exchange earlier today about that, and I'll keep you posted. It's definitely being considered, and they're taking this seriously. So
Good.
I can tell you that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on. So as I noted earlier, Provost Haggerty had an unexpected family emergency and regrettably won't be here today. Therefore, if there's no objection, the chair proposes that at this time to proceed to take up the presentation by José Aviles. Okay, hearing no objection, we will take up with Dr. Aviles' presentation. So José Aviles is Vice President of Enrollment Management, and today he will address the Enrollment Management's new policies regarding incoming freshman advising and student course schedule assignments.
Are the slides going to be on here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me just see what.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor today to be in front of you. It's been a little while since I've had the opportunity to be here with the Senate, and I have to say before I get into my remarks that it's been for me now 5 years that I've served as the Chief Enrollment Officer here at LSU, and it's been an honor to sit in this seat and to do the work that we do collectively as a community and specifically with each of you. I know the work that has happened here in the last 5 years, especially on the recruitment side of the house, has truly been leading the country on many metrics, perhaps all metrics that are associated with enrollment management. And a lot of that credit goes to this community and you faculty specifically, who have really over the last 5 years done phenomenal work in recruiting the best and brightest students from across the country to choose LSU. So today, really, I'm here to talk about academic advisement and the work that's happening in that space. As some of you know, back in January, the beginning of this year, the reorganization happened university-wide that brought the University College, the Center for Academic Success, and the University Registrar into the Enrollment Management Division. And that decision was made as we looked across the country. President Tate and the cabinet was looking at how institutions are organized in enrollment management divisions that include and are considerate of student success parts of the portfolio. And so through that landscape or environmental scan, the decision was made to bring into the unit these 3 critical units that really directly work with specifically student success, and specifically first-time students, the freshman class that enters through the University College largely. So you can't really talk about our work over the last 10 to 11 months without really talking about the work that's happening with the composition of the class and the student that's coming in. And so I wanted to start with that to really show over these last 5 years, what does the composition of the entering class look like for LSU? And so this graph just kind of highlights the trajectory of enrollment since 2017 through 2022. And again, remarkably, in many ways, we certainly have led the SEC in just about every one of these categories, whether it's non-resident enrollment, the increase in Pell, the growth in historically underrepresented groups or race and ethnicity categories, and the growth in first-generation students. But I know that we've now been noted in a couple of national journals and articles on the growth of this institution and these subpopulations leading the country in flagships, as flagship institutions or institutions of our size and type. So when you look at the 2022 graph, really what you see there is that now 41% of our class is coming in as historically underrepresented groups, compared to back in 2017, about 25% of the class being historically underrepresented. Our Pell growth, again, at this point, we're bringing in over 2,000 students who are Pell eligible students, which indicates they are low income students coming out of high school and are here on the Pell grant. An 82% growth. That is, again, an extraordinary, significant growth trajectory in that subpopulation. And again, 160% growth in first generation students. Pretty remarkable in terms of subgroups of students that truly are the students that public higher education should be focused on, and really are becoming or allowing LSU specifically to be more reflective of the state that we serve. So as we've engaged with the academic advisement question and student success question more broadly, I think I would just kind of walk you through what we've been doing in thinking about it from identified problems and the implications that we sort out. We are by no means at this point set strategically to move forward in a comprehensive strategy. That is still in the depth of questions and conversations that are happening. And in some ways also being discussed through the strategic planning process that the institution is engaged in, as we think about the direction for LSU over the next number of out years. So the very first problem that we identified as a team was the student to advisor ratios. We've done environmental scans of institutions that have successfully moved student success metrics and have moved them significantly. And to a T, to each individual institution that we investigated, that we discussed in this environmental scan, that we met with teams at those institutions, aside from the reorganization of the division and bringing into enrollment management a both recruitment and student success lens and accountability, the next thing that happened was the right sizing of student to advisor ratios. And so we have been doing a significant amount of work in this particular area. And part of it, as many of us at LSU know, in a place where resources are scarce, it has been part of making tough decisions on how we're spending resources in the budgets that are collectively making up enrollment management, and moving away from spending money on things that we don't necessarily, that are luxuries. For example, conference travel, or renovation of spaces, or buying new equipment. When I tell you that we've made decisions to cut to the bone in those spaces, that's what we've done to front load the funding of lines related to, or not related, lines for academic advisors in university college to get to a more right-sized ratio of student to advisor. So when you look at it, back in fall 21, when we got started with this, our advisor ratio was 600 to 1 in the university college. Completely out of whack with what the national standards are and what you see in some of these institutions that really have moved significant metrics on student success. This fall, we started with a student to advisor ratio of 350 to 1, which puts us right at the edge of what the national standard is. The national standard for caseloads is 350. Ideally, because of the growth that we have seen in the change in composition of the classes that I just showed you, I think that we need to be closer to 250 to 1. And I think that we still have some tough decisions ahead of us in our division. Now, all of these changes at this point have been made without asking for any new money or investment from the university. We've done this by making tough decisions on money that we currently control and redirecting those dollars to frontline staff. What we anticipate doing with this is creating a structure where we have students to advisor ratios of 250 to 1, and have, for the first time in LSU's history, as far as we understand, a 1-to-1 assignment of student to advisor for every entering freshman. So every entry freshman will be told, this is your assigned advisor in the university college who will work with you in transition into the institution and will work with you in your first year to schedule the appropriate classes for the intended interested area that you have. Alongside of that, as you can see here, the coordinated care network, a key hallmark of these other institutions that we've studied is exactly this, is that we now know more than ever that academic advisement, when a student is sitting in an academic advisement session, the conversations aren't just kept to the curricular issues that they might have or decisions they might have in front of them, especially with the significant growth in Pell eligible students and first generation students. Oftentimes the conversations bleed over into a much more comprehensive set of issues that the student is experiencing. So what we are trying to achieve with the coordinated care network, this is a model, again, that has been implemented at Florida State, University of South Florida, Virginia Tech, Georgia State, these institutions that have had significant gains in first to second year retention. The heart or the engine of their philosophy is the coordinated care network, which means that at the anchor point is the academic advisor. But if you can right size the actual academic coaching available to students in their first year, and actually the right size the financial aid counseling capacity, now all of a sudden you have what's called a student success team. Probably the best illustration of this is the University of Tennessee that just recently published a 2.5-point gain in their first to second year retention metric. And at the heart of it is the student success team. So we're really wrestling with this concept of thinking, is it possible with the freshman classes that we're bringing in to tell every student who's coming to LSU that you have your own specific and assigned student success team? We know we can do it with the advisement caseload. If we get to 250 to 1, I'm confident we can get to 250 to 1. I still see resources that are still left at the table that I'm willing to trade off and say, we're not going to do those things and we're going to hire more advisors. We've already hired 7 new advisors in this last window. I think we can push a little further. But can we then kind of do the same and place the same priority with financial aid counselors and academic coaches, so that, again, at the heart of every freshman coming to LSU, you have a student success team that's assigned to you to help lower the barriers that you might be confronted with and deal with some of the more comprehensive issues that you have. And so an academic advisor might be working with you on curricular issues, but at the point in which you're saying that you're working as a student who's Pell eligible, you might say, I'm working 30 hours. I have to work 30 hours. I don't get financial support from my family. Can that student be provided the opportunity to sit with their academic coach to actually help them understand how to manage their time, how to prioritize their academics, how to make sense of this challenging environment that they find themselves in now? It's a comprehensive approach, and it's called a coordinated care network. I think we can get here. It's ambitious, but I think we can get here. So that's part of identifying the problem related to the ratios that exist currently in serving our students. Second problem that we've identified is the misalignment with practice in advisement as it relates to the university college specifically. And part of this isn't so much that we are really in a space where we're not necessarily aligned with best practices, but really the work that's happening in academic advisement nationally, both on the research front and what we understand about advisement and its impacts to student success, but also in development of best practice, is moving incredibly fast. And we can really borrow from some of the institutions that I just illustrated to really develop best practices here at LSU in academic advisement. And so here's what this looks like for us. It starts with really creating a student-centric model that focuses on two core concepts. Number one, population health. And number two, coordinated care. I just talked about coordinated care and creating a web of support services that are well coordinated and efficient for students. Population health is really the strategy of taking big data that we have as students enter and being able to run significant analytics on that data to understand where students are coming into the institution and their potential likelihood to struggle at LSU. And so by having that kind of insight with the students who are coming in, can we proactively reach out to students where the data suggests that this student might need additional support or proactive support? I know Ed Shahada did a lot of this work early on here at LSU with predictive analytics, which was tremendously instrumental to move the institution into a space where they were already thinking this way and understanding the power of using analytics to really support students effectively. So population health is key to the work that we're going to do. So as we enter the new phase of student success, it means that yesterday's approach would be passive services that are there for any student who walks into the office to be served by. That's yesterday's approach. The forward thinking or cutting edge approach is managing your population health, identifying the students who need it most and prioritizing them. Again, if the data is suggesting that these students are likely to leave or not complete their degree, it is critical for us to find ways in which we can increase their priority to key services, whether it's academic advisement, academic coaching, financial aid counseling, but creating a priority structure where these students can actually get into services they need, because those interventions could be the decision point in which they stay or go. Second item here, institutional staff that's uncoordinated, unaccountable, and underutilized. Again, for me, what I've identified with the University College is that it's more, again, it's a passive approach where students walk in and sure, they're busy. They're serving a lot of students who are walking in. But then often there's lulls in the calendar where there is not a registration period. There's probably not a flow of student that's coming in. And so there's other work that's being assigned to academic advisors. And there's also no data-informed metrics, set of metrics that an advisor in the University College is responsible for. So for us, we're addressing all three of those. So it means sharp accountability, it means increased coordination and measuring effectiveness and efficiency. That means if you have an assigned caseload as an advisor in the University College, again, if you have 250 students and that set of that caseload is assigned to me, Jose, then I need to be responsible for the outreach and for the contact and for the service of that 250 set of students, and be able to measure that appropriately by the end of the semester, that I've been able to do something to proactively reach out and serve those students. And if you bring in the population health lens and you bring in understanding the analytical piece of it, any student on your caseload that really has a high need of priority, did you really reach that student before the end of the semester to serve that student adequately? The last one is services based on transactions, meaning students walk in, you do grade exclusion, process a drop, sign forms, and keep them moving. That's a transactional based approach. The new approach is building holistic risk models with academic and non-academic factors, and making sure that you're prioritizing the support that student needs that might be much more comprehensive than just academic, or it's much more comprehensive than just a transaction that used to exist in the world of academic advisement. This, by the way, is not something that I've created or what I've said. This is coming out of the work that EAB has been doing nationally to think about, well, how do we really move from a more passive approach to a much more proactive approach that increases student success metrics at campuses? And how do we identify and understand what it's looked like at those institutions that have had big swings, big upticks in student success on those campuses. So then that moves us to the next generation academic advisement model. So I've already talked a little bit about strategic caseload assignments, meaning every freshman is going to have an advisor, but we're going to use data to make sure that we are assigning caseloads based on what we understand of the student in terms of, you can imagine, academic interest areas, whether or not they have risk factors associated with them, whether or not they're in-state versus out of state. We are going to do our best to say, based on data, we think these students make sense to actually create cohorts out of and assign to these counselors. The most mature, the best counselors or advisors we have on our campus should be working with the students who we think have the greatest challenges. And how can we really match them up? Second one is proactive caseload management. Again, advisors being accountable for their caseloads. Are they actually taking the steps to actually initiate contact, ensure that students are actually engaged in academic advisement, academic coaching, or financial aid counseling processes to make sure that they are enhancing progression and not leaving progression to chance. And the last one is metrics to motivate and evaluate, meaning academic advisors in the university college will have a set of metrics that we agree upon that we think measure their effectiveness and efficiency and that they can monitor on a regular basis. Interestingly enough, when we looked at all this and in a different set of work that we're engaged with at the university level, we were asking questions around the Pell eligible students on our campus. And currently the Pell eligible students carry a significant influence on things like U.S. News and World Report rankings and what it means in terms of how you move up and down those rankings. Again, without really applying a lens like this to the community that we currently have or the processes we currently own, last year, 2,300 Pell eligible students here on our campus never once stepped into an academic advisement counseling session or advisement session. Again, one might say, okay, well, the student might not have needed. Well, I would say that I would suggest that the progression rates and the graduation rates for Pell eligible suggest otherwise, right? The graduation rate for Pell eligible students is about 56%. The university rate is about 70% for 6-year graduation. So there's a significant gap there where we should be doing better, and we want to do better in making sure those students are successful here. So the third problem that we're looking at and really examining is really understanding change of major behavior, the patterns, and what's happening with student preparation coming out of admission. When you look at what's happening with student change of major patterns, and you look at students who leave the university college and go into their first college, that first major, 63% of those students will change their major 2 times after that. 42% of our students will change their major 3 times or more. It's a significant swirl of students in and out of majors. And there's a considerable number of students who are changing their major more than 5 times on this campus. So the idea of how we're advising first-year students, again, we need a deeper conversation around that and what we understand about how we get students to the place where they really have an interest in being, and they're well-suited, well-prepared to actually engage in that discipline. Preparation is key and top of mind right now nationally. This is an example right now of what's happening when you think about the pandemic years, and for the national conversation right now in enrollment management. We are really focused on what has happened through those sets of 2 to 3 years, especially as high school students have gone into the digital world, virtual learning environments. What did it mean, and what are we starting to understand about that? A good way of looking at that is what the NAEP scores will tell us. NAEP is the national assessment that happens across the country for 3rd graders. I think it's 7th graders again. So it really starts giving us a sense of really where students are in the core competency areas. This is just a look when you look at what happened with students in terms of fundamental reading skills. And what you see is that there's been a decline in the early parts of the funnel already of students throughout these last few years, and that we're starting to see by 3rd grade the lagging about 7 percentage points from the historical mark. Because what we recognized during the COVID years is that truancy almost tripled nationally. So what is starting to be characterized is this notion of unmet learning. And so if you look at it, that's English, and I didn't have time to put math, but if you look at math, I have the math scores here on my tablet. We were at 43%. We were at 43%, and today we're at 35% in the measurement of math by third grade. So what that means to us is, as you think about what recovery might look like, and this is interesting because I just had a conversation with a faculty member yesterday who was saying to me, I think this cohort of student is probably weaker than ever, Jose. And I'm saying, well, when you look at the metrics of the entering class, it's the second highest ACT in our history and the highest grade point average in our history for the freshman class. So what's underneath the hood? And I think it's some of this, and that's not my first conversation I've had with faculty members around what their sense is of the quality of the classes coming in. But this is showing like, okay, if really these students are finding the gaps in learning that exist, so what does it look like? These researchers are looking at what does the recovery time look like if it ever happens in K-12? Well, one of the things they're suggesting is that over the next couple of classes, these kids, their recovery will happen when they're in college. It's not going to happen in high school for them. There was a study that came out yesterday from McKinsey that suggested that this recovery that higher ed is starting to project about readiness is probably more likely somewhere between 2029 to 2030. In terms of the gaps of unmet learning that are happening in K-12, again, ramifications of the pandemic. So what that means from an advisement perspective is the need to really infuse a much clearer, much intentional connection between what we understand of the student at the point of admission and the areas that they're intending to go into. And are we sure that the student has the preparation they need to engage in those disciplines? Or are there things that really the student needs to be advised to consider as they're really making choices curricularly, especially as we know that more than 60% of these students will change their major at least 2 times. So they don't stay in the areas where they are originally deciding to enter the institution. So can we make that transition a little less painful and more right-sized based on the information and the data that we have early on in the process? So those are the things that we're thinking about, the things that we are wrestling with in the advisement world. I promise you that everything that we're doing is really informed by data and a deep assessment. It's not something that is easily sorted out. And it's also something that we're not doing in a vacuum. We're looking at what other institutions have done, and we're learning from those institutions to say, can we move this forward for the betterment of our institution and for the students that we serve here at LSU? So do you have any questions? Anything I can help with? Either one. Yes.
Hi, my name is Margot Bro from the Department of French, Francophone Studies. And one of the problems that we have when students come out of high school, a lot of students take French in high school or another foreign language, and they are doing very well, and they love it, and they want to continue with it. And they do so well that they test out of 2 semesters of French, maybe even 4 semesters of French. The problem is that the computer that they go, when they send in their transcripts and everything, the computer sees, oh, you have satisfied your need for a French or a foreign language requirement. And then they knock it away. They don't, there's nobody there. There's no message on the computer that says, hey, you seem to like French. Would you like to major in French? Would you like to speak to an advisor regarding your obvious, enjoyment of that language or whatever thing that they're into? But the computer is just this dry thing that says, you don't have to do it anymore. Go take basket weaving or whatever. Is there some way that the computer can switch or send out a message saying, please consult an advisor regarding this capacity of yours?
Yeah. I mean, those are the kinds of things that are intriguing, right? Because I think part of the transition into what we're thinking of is going to be much more of a relationship-based set of work. And especially if we're able to achieve, again, I'm pretty confident, I just don't want to overpromise today, if we're able to achieve that every single freshman coming in has to sit with an academic advisor. Those are the kinds of things that I envision happening, right? Because I see that there's a lot of students at LSU based on the data. Let me give you a sense of data here. If you look at the bottom 20% of the admitted class, we had a lot of focus on that group this past year. I just pulled I got the data fresh this morning of what that group, the bottom 20%. So the bottom 20% of the admitted class, we would suggest that they are students that have probably the weakest preparation in the portfolio or in the class coming in. When we look at those students specifically, their retention rate at LSU is 73%, almost 10 percentage points lower than the institution. Their grade point average is 2.3. And only 25% of that group gets into their intended majors that they listed at the point of application. Part of my assumption and part of what I think is that because we really haven't had that kind of process where we're really having and initiating that advisement conversation, when a student says they want to go into engineering, if that's what they want to go into, and we're not even looking at their preparation, and we have some policies in place that probably need to be examined as well. But the student can run right into the buzzsaw of that first semester schedule, and they end up in this group with this data. And again, I just suggest humbly that we can do better.
Thank you. When do you envision that happening? Next semester or?
This next academic year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Ed, and then I'll take you. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. In a sea of bad news across the country about declining enrollments, this is quite a success story.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but behind your back, I refer to you as the enrollment magician, and I mean
Well,
that
I
as
appreciate
a
that.
compliment in every sense of the term. Good work. As a faculty senator, I just wanted to share a few concerns that I'm hearing from faculty about increased enrollment, and some of these concerns are not your concern in the strict job sense of the term. You have a job that you did very well. One concern I'm hearing, and I've experienced it myself, is that grade distributions in classes, while the means may be the same, the dispersions are different, and they're distinctly bimodal now, where I'm getting a, kind of a lump up here, which I've always had, and then there's this other mass down towards the bottom. And if I try to raise the requirement in the class, then I'm cruel and my DFW goes up to 20 or 25% or whatever it is. If I lower the requirements, and I get 40% getting A's. And so I raise that concern because I've talked to so many faculty that have experienced this now. This is not a systematic empirical study. The concern is that maybe open enrollment or wider enrollment or opening the door wider will ultimately downstream collide with the notion of academic accountability. So that's one concern. And then I think the second concern I'm hearing from faculty, and this is just a kind of a generalized concern, and again, you're not directly responsible for this, but is the drive to make the university larger necessarily a good thing? Is this a better place for that? And that conversation, to the perception of many, did not include faculty. And I don't hear a lot of faculty saying, did you hear the good news? The enrollment class is 70% higher. Yeah. And so that creates a lot of burden on faculty and so on. And I know the promise is the more people we get, the better the raises and all that. We haven't seen that increase in resources. That's not your problem. But so those are some of the concerns that I'm hearing. I just kind of wanted to share with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Ed. And what I can tell you is that we are entering, as you would anticipate, with a new administration, with a president who's come in with a different way of looking at things, and really even a cabinet that's differently configured, a whole different set of conversations than what we had when Dan Lozelle was here, King Alexander. I mean, there was and frankly, and I think I've said this enough publicly, there's no question that when I got here in 2017, this was the most anxious community I had walked into from an enrollment and revenue perspective. The wheels had come off. And I remember people staff characterizing when I did my listening tours, stories of not having raises for 10 years and the fact that we just missed a class so significantly. And would that mean a closing of departments? I mean, it was a sharper anxiety than any other community I had walked into. That I probably set the agenda in motion for the way it was and the way it has been. But I can tell you that the conversations that are just starting to take root now are questioning that, are just opening the door to say, is this exactly what you're saying? Is this the right direction? Or could we think about, are we outstretched? You know, have we gone too far? Is there a way to kind of right-size that and right-size the budget model? Those are all questions that are currently today being had. So, yes.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I echo what my colleague from the French department said. We met with Tammy Johnson 2 weeks ago to talk about this. She's in the Office of Admissions Transcript Analyst, and we mentioned the same problem, that the students come to us with an AP of 4 or 5, either in French or Spanish. They should come directly into the major or the minor by telling them that the requirement is complete. What we are doing is just closing for them the door to double major or to have a major and double minors or 3 minors. So that comment is for us is very important. And we mentioned that to Tammy, that there is a need to spread the word about majors and minors, which connects to my question. Like something I noticed is that our students don't have any kind of career advising. Like in the Spanish inside of the Department of World Languages, Literatures, and Cultures, Spanish is the only one who has a major and a minor. So we try to run career advising
Yes.
fair for those who are trying to complete the major and the minor, so they have an idea of what they can do if they
Yes.
complete the major. But I think that that's something that we need to make sure that all the students have for different majors.
Yes.
And we have the Go Law Week, which is a good idea for the students who intend to complete the law. But if they don't complete the major first in history or political science, then there is no way they can go to law school, right?
Yes.
So we need to emphasize a little more that. And then I think that your presentation on UC college students is wonderful in the terms of we are addressing a need, but there is a second need, and the need that once the students complete their university college, they come into us,
Yes.
right? Majors and minors. So we also need more support in that, on the
Yes.
advising. I completely rely on the service of LSU Care for my students I have freshmen even on my upper level classes, and I have to send them to LSU Care for mental health issues.
Yeah.
So how are we going to connect with that, with LSU Care, and how fast they can approach them or not? Because right now, if the student is in the university system, it can take 1 to 2 days for LSU Care to reach the student, unless I say something like, it is an emergency, or I write an email to LSU Care directly and say, it is an emergency. So
Right.
there is something that I think that what you are proposing is very interesting, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we have a support, like we try to coordinate things a little
Yes.
more, to have a little emphasis. And then my last comment is I am very concerned on our, do we have enough classrooms for the class? And I mentioned this because this semester I moved my class 3 times,
wow.
times. And it's a question of the buildings. Do we have the right facilities? So that is a real, for me, that is a real need that we need to address as we are welcoming students. I am always happy to be in the classroom with the students. So I am the kind of, please come.
Yes.
But at the same time, I am like, we need to make sure that if we are gonna receive them, we have to be ready to welcome them. We cannot
Yes.
just receive them.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that perspective, and trust me, this is what I think is probably the next 12 to 18 months of work. There are so many other things that need to be addressed. If I really were to be ambitious to say what a student success team really looks like, it does include career counseling and also peer mentoring. Those 2 areas really fit outside the scope of the unit that I control right now, but I've been talking to Jeremiah Shin, the Vice President for Student Affairs, around career counseling specifically. And I think probably, if not this cycle, maybe the next cycle, we have that embedded for, again, every student to have that as a resource. But there's no shortage of problems. And certainly I'm noting that the points around, the examples with foreign languages. I think there's things that we can do there. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I agree with the increase and so forth, but
Hard to hear.
2 other concerns that I've heard from my faculty, and this is from the college, is one is the students that came in this fall, there were hundreds of errors in their schedules. That then meant a very hard, burdensome download onto people that were not paid to do that. and so forth. And they basically said they filled a survey in where some of them were putting their grade 7 or grade 8 SAT tests and so forth. A large amount of correction had to be done. And the people that were sort of experts in the field were never consulted. So that's one that my college is complaining about heavily, and they would like not to see that gremlin again. If we
Okay.
consider that, that's a defect. And if I basically added up with business and engineering, it may have been 25% of the students had that defect, which I don't think is a good way of introducing a first generation student to an institute where we're trying to basically make a relationship for generations, for their siblings, for their cousins,
Right.
and their network.
Right.
That's one. And I know that they were very upset in STEM on that. Number two, my faculty got asked to fill in a survey about students in need. Every single student in my colleagues who did honors classes had those students. This is a bit of a problem with your guys' big data. You need to basically link that up to Moodle, to where when a student reaches some level below, we go, because this is just not fathomable for faculty. It's just an unbelievable workload. She basically put into a spreadsheet and then put comments. No, we don't accept that spreadsheet. So the big data did not have what she had noticed in class at the front-facing person. So these are two of the complaints my faculty have said that they'd like you to understand
Yeah, thank you.
and see how that could be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're far from perfect. There's no question that the second point around Moodle and the integration with the progress reports doesn't exist. There's no way right now to actually have, and part of that is a mainframe issue. So maybe we're away from that in 2 years from now. The other thing that we've tried to do with progress reports is to say so we want to have a progress report to the best of our ability of every freshman that we have to see where they are, right? To make an intervention on that student. But what we try to tell faculty is only report students that you find are struggling. If everyone's struggling, then that's a different question.
Well, basically some of your faculty are teaching close to 1,000 students.
Yeah.
Going through a list where all those students are listed, this is just an unbelievable
Burden,
time
yeah.
cost
Yeah.
that is not sustainable for your faculty
Yeah.
with all the other demands with this new class coming in, where we're really trying with the mathematics. You just mentioned mathematics. In STEM, we have to reteach that math. We don't have remediation here. So this is basically just another unpaid overhead being dumped on the faculty, especially ones that are doing the large classes who are the talented ones.
Yeah. Yeah, no, understood, no question. I mean, again, the progress report process is something that is critical. So how do we find a way to actually create a leverage point for faculty where it's not so burdensome? That's going to be a difficult task because of the numbers we're dealing with. But maybe there is some ways, especially as we get into more innovative technology. And the scheduling piece, that's another piece that we need to talk about, because that does intersect with all of this as it relates to the preparation of the students coming in, right? Again, part of what we tried to do this past year in the University College is say any student that really is showing a lack of preparation in the first gateway math course that they're going into in that given discipline, we have to really look at that closely and say, is it in their best interest to be in that class, even though they're indicating that that's what they're interested in or not? Those statistics I just gave you, that's this group. So again, if we're sitting in previous practices, past years, we would have given them that first semester schedule to be in business or to be in engineering. But the data is telling us only 25% of those kids ever make it into that college. And they leave that first semester limping with a 2.3 grade point average. So that's not good either. So it really is a transition point of say, how do we take the preparation of the student into account in building the first semester schedule? And you're right, how do we do that in a way that we communicate that across the enterprise so that people understand exactly what the methodology is? We did communicate it to deans. Deans understood that last year. So did the actual students coming in. They also understood that. But I've worked with students for 25 years, as many of us do. Is one thing telling an audience and another thing when they show up and say, no one told me. So, all right. Yes.
Joe Lagoria, Business School, Department of Accounting. We had the same concern in business, and this is a comment, and I have a question about some data about, it seems your model is kind of taking out the college advisors, whereas about 8-10 years ago, like you have a business engineering and business have a residential college for freshmen, and a lot of the advising is done from the College of Business, we have some good people there. I'm sure you guys do too. We have department, I'm in accounting, we have great, and a lot of that was done with freshmen. And it seems like your model is almost becoming a centralized model, and the college level advising and department level is being sort of done away with. That's what I'm getting from this. I could be wrong, but that seems to be, because I heard nothing about the advising done at the more local level. That's a comment, and my question is about the data. And I hate to sound like a statistical nerd, but you had 7,000 incoming freshmen, and you said it's the highest ACT. Is that a random sample of all of them, or is that
That's the average.
self-reporters
That's the average.
of all
average.
7,000?
Yes. The
Okay.
average profile is reported to the common data set.
Was reported. Do they self-report, or do all students report?
No, not all students. So we are test optional. So
Okay,
not every student, but for the last 2 years, we've been test optional.
okay,
So
so
some students can decide not to report. And sure, you could argue that maybe we're advantaged because some students didn't report.
okay, but I think you have you have what's called a self-selection problem, which, so if you're, never mind. Okay, so
Sure.
if
Sure,
you're
you could argue that. There's no.
if you
question.
compare, okay, a cross section to when you did it, time series, you have a panel of data, there's a self-selection. So again, it may be, it may be true, it may not be, but I saying it's the best ever, I
Well,
think,
sure, certainly, especially in a group of faculty, I would get that question. It is the standard of reporting though, right? So you're not,
Yes.
this is the way you report up to the common data set nationally. That's the profile of the incoming class. And again, if you want to argue that maybe it would have dipped if everybody reported, well, the last 2 years we've been test optional. So go back 3 years and you don't see the dip in the average, and we had 100% reporting. So every single year for the last 5 years, ACT has remained constant in terms of what it's been, even though we've been growing. We have not declined in the ACT profile of the institution in the last 5 years. It's only the last 2 years where we have not had 100% reporting because it's test optional. And we will continue to be test optional because
but okay, fair enough, okay.
Hi, Hannah Belglavitz from Music. I just had a question. I had two questions. So the first question is just about kind of when students are applying, sometimes they click that they're interested in music. And the complaint we always get from our recruitment staff is that there's, we have so many specialized parts of music. Like they might be interested in music education. They might be interested in trombone performance, viola performance, things like that. So I wonder if there's a mechanism for like our personal colleges adding more to the application if they happen to click that they're interested in music or something like that.
We might be able to do that subsequent to the application is a common application, so there's very little flexibility in that. But we could probably do more after that. After a student applies and they indicate music, we can certainly do some follow-up communication with them, asking them to be more precise about what they're interested in.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful because I find that I think there's a lot of melt with the final auditions because students don't know which instrument, they don't know what to like apply for, what to play. And then the second question I had, I knew I was going to do that. Okay, well, I lost it. That's okay. Thank you.
Feel free to email me, and I'll certainly want to connect you with Danny Barrow, who's the Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management, who deals with the recruitment side to fix that. Any more questions? No, we can do 2 more. All right. So 2 more questions? Yeah. Sorry. I'm here, so.
Oh, do you want it from? Here you go.
Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. So 2 short questions, and I wrote them down so I won't forget because I know how that works. First off, one of the things that's kind of been in the grapevine the last couple of semesters is that your office is actually deciding the schedules for the students when they come in. So that, rather than the student coming in and having a discussion with an advisor and saying, yeah, this is what I'd like to do. And okay, maybe that's good, maybe that's not. And sort of reaching an agreement between them that people in your office are actually making the schedules for the students and just giving it to them. Is that accurate?
That's the start of the process, but we do have for these last 3 years, I think it's been 3 years. We've offered one-to-one academic advisement at the point of orientation. So it's not fair to say that students have no input. We start with what we know the entry semester, what the first semester schedule is as a requirement for a given discipline. We prepare that schedule, we send it to the student, and when student comes into the orientation, we sit with offer the student to sit one-on-one with an advisor to actually go through the classes that they've been selected. We also ask for students before we create the schedule on a survey to ask them what their interest, we tell them, we know that you're interested in X. Tell us what specifically you're interested in as it relates to these areas, because we see that you've passed the French, we see these other things, and we construct a schedule based on what they tell us they're interested and what we see in their application at the point of entry. But previous to these last 3 years, in orientation, students never were offered a one-on-one advisement session with an academic advisor. Some colleges did it, not all colleges did it. Some colleges because I audited all this when I inherited orientation. There was some colleges that would actually have an upper class student sit with an incoming freshman to have a conversation, not a professional academic advisor. So every student has an opportunity to sit down with advisor. Every student has an opportunity to change their schedule.
Okay, so they do have an opportunity to change it. Okay,
Absolutely.
fantastic. So second question, so I actually worked as an academic advisor for 4 years as an undergraduate. So I kind of come to these
So you know it.
conversations with some background. And I mean, so I was in the pre-major advising office and, we did orientation and then we met with students. We were on a quarter system, but students had to come in every quarter and have a meeting with an advisor in order to have the advisor sign off on
Yes.
the schedule, right? So it was required
Yes.
meetings. You were talking about first year students, thousands of them not seeing an advisor.
Yes.
So is it correct that we do not have required meetings for the first year
That's
students?
correct.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But
Yeah,
this
that
is,
should
again,
change.
this is my 8th institution, my 3rd flagship, and this is the first institution that does not require academic advisement before scheduling. And so we're hoping to get to that. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Param Singh. I'm from College of Science. And from College of Science, like many faculty have various concerns. So maybe I'll just try to summarize some of the things. You mentioned about the enrollment increases and so on throughout disciplines. But for example, like if we take the benchmark course for physics and engineering, that's math 1550, which is calculus.
Yes.
So till 2 years ago, the average enrollment was 1,500. In last 2 years, it's 1,200 and 1,100. So certainly like that data is like very gross what you are presenting. Like for certain disciplines, the enrollment for the most key courses has significantly gone down by 40%.
Mhm.
And I can explain why. So in the College of Science, at least like for various departments, a lot of people had spent a lot of time, faculty members and advising students, telling them, well, if you want to take physics, you have to take Cal 1, and that is how you will make progress in physics major and so on. Now, in this previous year, there were 35 students in a freshman course of physics, 20 of which have absolutely no math course accompanying them. So we are just setting up them for disaster. They are going to be out anyway from that freshman course. They will not take physics major. I'm just taking physics as an example. Now, the point is, like when some students were asked like what happened and why you were not taking the math courses, they were saying they were not advised to take this Alex test. And then like when they reached out to I think to EM or the counselors, there was a dispute whether they were given or not, but there is no record that they were advised about taking Alex test in July and enrolling for calculus and so on. So the point is like, there is a significant discrepancy which is happening because for success in science majors, the courses which are needed for the freshman students, they are not being put in the right courses. That is just a fact. And I have the data with me. Unfortunately, I have to say this, 2 things. At least 2 of the students said that when they approached the counselors, one of the counselors said, I cannot advise physics majors. That's a fact. The second thing, when the students like when they were trying to like sort out all of this, and they were trying to look at the qualifications of the counselors. Unfortunately, I confirmed this, but I couldn't find any of the advisors there which have any bachelor's degree in physics, chemistry, math, or biology, or geology. So I'm not surprised that we need probably the help from the College of Science or College of Engineering again, or you need to hire people who have degrees which can tell which subjects to choose. Otherwise, I think what will happen is that even if we have a first year retention rate good, these students who will be taking 4 years to pass the degree, they'll be taking 7 years.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no question. I mean, so again, the first part of that with the decline in math, that's not surprising to me. First and foremost, understand that to your point about where the actual metrics look across the state, math readiness benchmarks in the state slid almost 6 points from 2017 to today for the state population. 85% of the College of Science students, entering students, come from Louisiana residents. Math readiness is at an alarming rate in decline. So that's the first part of that, why you're seeing probably fewer students. Could there be errors in advisement? I won't dispute that, maybe there are. And that's where the partnership needs to exist with College of Science and say, how do we remedy this, right? Our goal is not to put students on the wrong track, but there is a need for us to inject university-wide a consideration of what we understand of the preparation of the student coming out of their high school environment and whether they are best suited to be in the classes that they are putting in their application. Again, I'll remind you, especially when 65% of the students are changing their major, they're not going to stay in that major. And they're probably not staying in their major because they find after their first set of courses, the first semester, that they haven't found the success that they thought they would have. But we know that. We know that at the point of application, at the point of admission, we can see their math preparation. And we need to be the advisor in the equation to say, it's probably now not in your best interest to take this schedule that's associated with physics, even though you're saying you're interested in physics, you're not ready for it. So let's have a conversation of how you become ready for it. But I agree, if you're saying that a student had physics and no math, and the College of Science is saying that that's going to put you back that's a problem. Yeah, we need to fix that.
So out of 35, 20 students don't have math.
Yeah.
So they are set for failure.
Yes, you got to fix that.
I'm Scott Baldridge. I'm in mathematics. So this prompts my question, which is the ALEX. We know how to use the ALEX system and how the ALEX score comes out to then properly place our like students in the different math classes. And my chair says that we have 12 different, basically 12 different strands. Depending on your ACT score, your ALEX score, right? We can help place those students. Can you, at least we know that we can do this, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how you do use the ALEX score in your advisement? So it
absolutely
goes back to this question.
Yeah, so ALEX right now, there's a clear standard for students to get into Math 1021, to get into 1550. The challenge isn't so much with 1550 for us as the question is being articulated, right? It's more on that 1021. 1021 is the one that we're really focused on. Students will take an ALEX after the point of deposit. The student confirms their interest to be in LSU. We start messaging to them that they need to take ALEX as a placement mechanism, especially if they don't have an AP score, an IB score, or an ACT score. They need that as a placement mechanism. If a student scores 40 or higher, they're fine to be in 1021. If they score anything below that, they can go into the co-requisite of math, right? So it's a math that's more supportive. And part of this conversation does bleed into a conversation with Oliver Doshback is saying, as we think about the policy for this, understand that on this campus, a student who gets a D, F, or W in Math 1021 drops out 80% of the time. That's an alarming rate. But anyone who scores below 40 on ALEKS can get into Math 1021, the co-requisite. So as we talk about the changing time, that's a conversation to have is, do we need to create some other kind of standard to say, maybe a student that is in 10, maybe at 30 or 20, and I don't know the scale well enough to say what that cutoff should be. Oliver does. But to say, we probably need to create a more supportive policy to say, yeah, at this level, students can be in 1021 co-requisite. But if they're not that, they need to think about a different math option outside of this space because they're not ready to be supported at LSU in Math 1021, right? So is it 1029 or is it a different math and is it a whole different track that the student should be looking at, not a STEM-based field? Those are the things that are the implications or considerations that again need to be investigated a little bit more deeper.
So we take we take service very, very carefully. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I could hear you the first time. I can hear you better now.
So we take service, the math department obviously takes the service of mathematics classes for everybody else very, very, very seriously.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that the ALEKS, like the ALEKS system, the ACTs are helping to place them properly.
Yes.
And that's why I'm asking this question.
No, we're in agreement there.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, and by the way, it is true that the ACT scores have taken a nosedive in mathematics because of COVID.
All right, folks.
Yeah. Sorry, the last two, 1, 2.
Okay, sorry. I just want to echo what one of the colleagues over in that side said about advisors in their own college. We have many advisors in HSS who are happy to advise our students, but they're not being used. And I'm just wondering who is going to train the advisors that you propose, because many of our students come to us and say, oh, I got an advisor who said your department doesn't even offer a major in French, which is completely wrong.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
how are y'all's new advisors going to be trained to know what each department offers?
Yeah. So we absolutely need to strengthen the relationship in that with the colleges and the university college. Understand that really at this point now, we have really two direct admit colleges, right? We have art and design and we have MDA. What my experience has been previous to this last cycle, and it's really, so really what I have found is that some colleges are happy to advise freshmen coming in, right? Even if they're not directly declared in the college because they sit in the university college, right? They're freshmen, there's still requirements that need to be met before they can transition into the college. But there's also a significant number of colleges that don't have the capacity to do that. And my office has gotten significant volume of phone calls from parents who used to say, especially at the point of orientation, at orientation, we met with the College of X. That's who helped us through the scheduling. Now, as my son or daughter is on campus, they've gone to College X and College X is saying, we can't take you. You're a university college student or you UCFY student. And so families being frustrated about this bait and switch. I do think that we need to get to a point of saying the university college needs to be the home for the freshman year. That's what it's termed. We need to elevate that stature on campus and we need to work with the colleges so that the colleges are working with the UC advisors to provide the training they need to advise students appropriately. And our commitment should be that we are going to deliver to your doorstep as a college, students who are in good standing, who are the right students ready to engage with your discipline. And that's really the gold standard of what we should be doing. Moving from university college into the colleges and stop the unevenness of we need to standardize the freshman experience so that all freshmen who are in the university college understand what their roommate might be going through, which is the same experience they're going through, which their friend is going through, because it's a standard experience in advisement that they're experiencing at LSU. That's not this unevenness where some college might take the freshman, but the other will say, don't come. Yeah, Joan. Hi, Joan.
Hi. I was just wondering, we used to in the past
have the counselors and UCFY meet with us, the advisors,
Yes.
so they could learn about all the different curriculums. And I haven't seen them do that for a long time. I didn't know if you're going to bring that back.
I would
So
love
that
to.
the counselors can more easily advise people and direct them into majors that they might succeed in better.
Yes. Yeah, no, I would love to do that. We've started doing that with the recruitment site, with the recruitment end. I haven't gone back to the level of understanding what UC has been doing with that. In this next transition window, as we start bringing in the new class of freshmen, yeah, I think we need to get the colleges in that kind of relationship, where they're coming into UCFY and we're actually doing some sort of training or exchange of information so that our advisors are not on this island where, again, we're open to scrutiny, right? Because they're not equipped to appropriately advise, right? Okay.
I know we have students come in to meet with different departments sometimes. I forget what those days are called. But-
For recruitment, you mean? Like the recruitment
Yeah,
process?
kind of like
Yeah.
the recruitment
Yeah,
process.
kickoffs or destinations, yeah.
Do we have like a specific day or something similar, like a majors fair for high school students for our college, our university?
We have academic fairs as part of kickoffs and destinations where students can go into a college fair atmosphere to explore other options. At my former institution, we used to do something for undeclared students, which again, based on the percentages I talked about with the change of major, I think might be an appropriate strategy here. We used to do this thing called, we used to have a very vibrant Main Street at that campus. And at the end of the spring semester, every year, or near the end, before finals, we would do this thing called Majors on Main, because we had such a significant number of undeclared students. And every college, every department was able to actually have a college fair format where the undeclared students can explore the different options they have available to them and get to know disciplines that they probably didn't even know existed. It was a really, really vibrant program catered to really providing a resource for the undeclared students. I think that would be great to do for the university college students at the end of that first year. Again, if we know that 60% of these students are changing their major multiple times, something's at the root of that where they don't fully understand the discipline that they declared, or they're not well suited for, well prepared for it. So we need to do more to create an opportunity for them to gather that information. Yeah. Right. All right, colleagues, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. All right.
Your time. Thank you so much for your time and for, please join us for a reception afterwards in just a few minutes. Okay, so we don't have any new business and the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Please join us for the reception just outside. All the guests are welcome to attend as well. Thank you. Have a wonderful new year.